UNL Student Union Ballroom, followed by the Call to Action program at 10:15.
At 11:30, we march to the state capitol.
Let's walk together.
Good afternoon. Are we on? Are we on? Hello? I don't know if... Oh, this one's on. Okay. You can have this. Sorry. Okay. Good afternoon.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to My Walk, a walk in education featuring 4 amazing guests. Today is the 6th installment of the My Walk Empowerment series brought to you by the Planning Committee of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Youth Rally and March in partnership with the Youth Development Team of Lincoln Public Schools and Rally Mountaintop stakeholder Pillar Restaurant Group. My name is Milena and this is Thursey and McKenna, and we are members of the Rally and March Planning Committee and our journalism students at Lincoln Southwest High School. My fellow classmates and I have had the pleasure to help capture various walks and showcase this year's Rally and March theme, Walk Together.
The Rally and March is an entirely community-run experience with a mission to promote the life and dreams of the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Dr. Leola Bullock, a longtime civil rights activist, through positive youth action. We hope you will join us this Monday for the 25th edition of the Rally. Last, thanks to our host this afternoon, Lincoln Public Schools, who is streaming and making this available to a greater audience. And finally, thanks to each of you for joining us. We encourage you to use social media this afternoon to share inspiration and pictures from what you hear today. Tag us at MRally93 or use the hashtag WalkTogether or hashtag LPSWalk. I think it's only fitting today, January 15th, what would have been Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s 91st birthday, that his quote, "The function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education," end quote. This is the basis of the walks that will be shared today.
Shared will be the walks of William Bryant, student advocate for the African American community, Tori Westling, parent of 3 Lincoln Public School scholars, Dr. Steve Joel, superintendent of Lincoln Public Schools, and Layla Amari, a scholar at Lincoln North Star High School, who serves on the 2019 to 2020 District Multicultural Equity Diversity Scholar Cadre. Each will share some of their steps, meaningful moments, challenges, and advice that supports their walk in education. We are fortunate and appreciative each are willing to share a few steps along their walk. Okay. And first up is Tori Westling. So during your lifetime, you've had so many walks. Could you share with us some steps that have been meaningful on your walk?
Well, I would say the most meaningful is having my 3 kids, but also in the process of raising them, completing an associate's degree and a bachelor's degree while working full-time. Yeah, so again, as I stated, I worked full-time. I started working at State Farm and started on my associate's degree. And then my daughter, who's here, Asia, she was born. And then I completed my associate's degree, started working on my bachelor's degree. And then her twin brothers were born a year and a half later, and they're also here in the back room, Makai and Malik Fleming. While working full-time and transitioning to parenthood, I continue to take online courses at Bellevue University and working towards my bachelor's degree then. And by the time I also had switched positions at State Farm to a new department too. But when I completed my bachelor's degree, they were still all under the age of 4. So it was, needless to say, stressful at times. I definitely had to rely on the village to help me along, whether that be grandma's friends, preschool, a little bit of everybody kind of helped me out along the way. Also, very grateful for my employer. They were also helpful in allowing me to be flexible with raising the kids and going to college at the same time. But it wasn't easy. So for the parents that are in here, you know that the toddlers get sick and they don't always want to go to bed when you need them to go to bed so you can do your homework. And there were lots of nights where there was little to no sleep because you had to have a paper due. So that was probably one of the most challenging times of my life, but also definitely the most rewarding.
Absolutely. What is some advice you would provide to others along their walks?
So although I went about the, I guess the non-traditional approach society would say for doing these things, the thing I would probably say is not to give up, because the again, the reward has definitely been worth it. It changed the trajectory of my life and the life of my kids.
Wow. And we just want to thank you for coming. So I really appreciate it. It takes an amazing mother to raise amazing children.
Thank you.
Our next walk today is Bill Bryant. So can you start by describing one meaningful moment that you've encountered along your walk?
Well, it's really kind of difficult to just pick out one particular meaningful moment. There are a lot of students who I've worked with that have struggled with low self-esteem, low confidence. I have a student that never imagined himself as being a college student, who went on to college to excel and be on the dean's list and really amazed himself. I've had students that had to take a couple of extra years to graduate, which takes a lot of fortitude. I've had students that excelled who had experienced domestic violence, students that had behavioral issues that went on to learn skills at the community college and become certified welders, and the list just goes on and on. So it's just hard to pick out one of those, because I'm just as happy for one as I am another.
And how does it make you feel when these students that you've guided and helped have accomplished these great things?
Well, I feel the same as if it were my child, because with the village concept, when I see a child, I see a member of my family, because they're a member of my community. And a rising tide lifts all boats. So when one succeeds, we all succeed.
Thank you. And what would you say would be one hurdle that you faced along your walk?
It's difficult at times to stay positive, upbeat, hopeful when there's so much negativity swirling around in our society, and being able to instill that hopefulness in students and families in spite of experiences they might have had that could have snuffed out their candle of hope.
And what are ways that you kind of combat these hurdles and help raise those families back up?
Well, again, to re-speak the thing that Tori spoke of, you have to remember not to dwell on setbacks. I remember having a drill sergeant in the military who would tell me, Bryant, you have to adapt and overcome. So basically, you set goals, and if you can't achieve those goals in a manner in which you had planned, you just adjust those and just keep going.
And how would you say that you have instilled that belief in the people that you work with?
Well, I've had several students. Hardly a month goes by that I don't encounter a student that has overcome, that says, hey, I'm glad you stayed on me. I'm glad you didn't give up on me. I see now what you were talking about. And when you get those little feedback coming in from time to time, that's enough to inspire you to stay in the trenches a little bit longer.
And what initially inspired you to take on this role?
Well, I was very reluctant. I know what I was like as a teenager, and when I was approached about working with the youth as a volunteer coach some years back, and I told my old friend and teammate that, you sure you got the right guy? And he says, no, you'll bring something to the table. And so going from volunteering and then substitute teaching and then being encouraged to apply for a student advocate position kind of pulled me fully into the matrix. And once you're in, you're stuck kind of, because you can't walk past people in need and not want to extend a hand to help.
And did you ever see yourself in this position?
Not in a million years, but it has been quite challenging. But at the same time, it's very rewarding.
Yeah. Thank you. And what would you say would be one piece of advice for people along their walk, whether it's similar to yours or different?
Well, if we dwell on past disappointments and failures and constantly look back, we'll probably always be depressed. And if we worry about tomorrow, we'll probably always be anxious and nervous. But to be present and do the best that we can each day is the most you can do, and tomorrow will take care of itself.
And do you have any specific examples of times that you've lived out that advice?
Well, I feel that my life is kind of a testament to that. Anyone that knows me knows that it's taken quite a few twists and turns to bring me to this point in my life, and the journey is far from over.
And what are some ways that you've seen your students use that advice throughout their lives?
Well, when they exhibit resilience and say that I'm not going to do this, or I can't do this, or I won't come to summer school, if I can't graduate with my class, then I'm done, and then have that epiphany that time will pass anyway, and do you want to spend your life thinking, well, if I'd only done this, or if I'd only decided to give it one more try, my life could have been totally different. And I've seen that time and time again, so it gives me hope that in spite of the way things seem sometimes, you can't let the forces of evil or negativity just bring you down.
And are there other aspects of your life that you've used that advice, not just in your advocacy position?
Well, I've been a CPS worker with Health and Human Services. I've been a paralegal with the Lancaster County Public Defender's Office. I've been a family enrichment coordinator for the community center. I've worked on hundreds, if not thousands, of automobiles. Just whatever I can do to be of service to my community and my friends, I'll do that.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
You're welcome.
And then next up, we have Miss Layla Amari from Lincoln North Star. So first, tell us about a couple of meaningful moments that you've encountered along your walk so far.
Okay, so one of the most meaningful moments that I've personally found out throughout my walk is that we as students have so much power to do literally anything we want to if we're willing to dedicate hard work. And an example of this is my tutoring nonprofit. So just 8 months ago, I was sitting in my physics class and I was talking to a couple friends of mine, and we were just, reminiscing about like the old days. And I kind of said something along the lines of, I wish I had guidance in elementary school because I really didn't have anyone there. Like I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anyone to guide me to like to tell me what I needed to do in high school. And I, as a first generation immigrant, my parents really don't know the school system and they don't know how everything works here. And I was talking to some friends and they were like, okay, let's change that. And I was like, yeah, like I'm on board. What do you guys have in mind? So we decided to start a nonprofit tutoring organization here in Lincoln called Aston. And kind of just looking at it, we were really expecting to only hit like 3 or 4 schools maximum. Like we really didn't know what we were doing. And we met with our principal, and in that physics class, thank you so much, Mr. Dowdy, for letting us work on our presentation, but we were kind of just sitting there making like a bunch of ideas, and we were just jotting down like all of these different things that we wanted to interact into our organization. And we met with our principal, who then directed us to our CLC coordinator at North Star, Joe Morrison, who then connected us with, I see her in the back, Emily Koopman. She's the director at Campbell Elementary School, one of our biggest supporters. So if we could give her a round of applause, that'd be amazing. And she let us pilot our idea in the summer at Campbell Elementary School, and then from then, we were able to meet so many more CLC directors, and I'm proud to say that last semester we served 18 different schools and over 17,000 students here in Lincoln, Nebraska, which has honestly been amazing. And one of the stories that I hold like really near and dear to my heart is at Campbell, where I'm like the representative there. And it's just amazing seeing how the students have reacted. So I've had students who have came up to me like in the club and asked me for extra homework and asked me for like extra worksheets. And when we first started the club, the students didn't even want to do their homework. So just like seeing how much we've been able to like build their character by interacting with them and showing them that, doing your homework is amazing for you, and just being their friends rather than their teacher has been something that has been so meaningful to me. And recently, this Monday, I met with a teacher at Campbell who told me that one of her students who I work with personally has requested my club and has also requested more homework and has become better in the classroom. And this is a student who was very resilient to even doing work. So just that has really like touched me and inspired me to continue this. So just seeing how much impact we as high school students can have on our community and our younger students is really amazing.
Yeah, in what ways do you feel that that club can help elementary school students when they get to high school?
Yeah, so how this club runs is all of our volunteers are high school students. And the way that they volunteer is in LPS, we have a 20-hour requirement for service hours or GoPo hours, and we recruit them in exchange for the GoPo hours. But the majority of our tutors have actually been like juniors and sophomores who want teaching experience and who just want to interact with kids in our community. And it's been amazing. We have over 100 dedicated tutors, and just like the impact that these students have on these younger kids just shows that they're role models. So it kind of gives them, they feel more comfortable interacting with people closer to their age.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the flip side, what would be one hurdle that you've encountered?
One of the biggest hurdles that I've personally encountered within my walk has probably been, again, like you don't see many Muslim women within like the workplace, and you don't see many Muslim women who are very involved within the school system. Like it's a very new concept. Like really recently accepting diversity to the point that we have. I know only this year we started the multicultural like equity cadre. We've started a lot of programs and we're starting to get into it. But for me, one of the biggest hurdles was I would walk into a room. I'm a 5'1" Muslim woman, and people really wouldn't like see anything. It was kind of just like, oh yeah, like, okay, cool. Like people wouldn't take me seriously. And I had to build myself up to the point where it's just like, you know, I go around North Star and I have like all of these underclassmen who are like, oh, hey, like that's Layla, what's up? Like, hey, can you help me with this? It's just I've built myself up to the point where people like ask me for help and guidance, and I'm more than happy to give that. So going like back to your question, kind of getting past like the social statuses that we've set, and then also your biggest hurdle is yourself. So there was a lot of times where I felt like, oh, I can't do this, I'm not good enough for this, or oh, I can't, you know, succeed because of who I am. And I was just so scared and nervous, and I had all of this like self-consciousness that built up. But learning how to get past that and kind of telling myself that, okay, it'll be fine, I'll get through this and I can do this, is how I've accomplished that.
Right. And what are some ways that you want to instill that belief and that desire to overcome those in other people of minorities, whether religious or racial?
Yeah, of course. So one of the biggest things is being a role model for others. So for me, growing up, I didn't have, you know, a Muslim American who I could look up to. I didn't have someone who particularly looked like me. And it was kind of just learning how to like look at people and be like, okay, it doesn't matter what race you are, it doesn't matter what culture you are, you're still capable of accomplishing anything you want to accomplish by working hard and putting all of that effort in.
Thank you. And then lastly, what would you say would be a piece of advice for people along their walk?
My biggest piece of advice is never give up. So one of the ways that you can actually do this is find your mission. So I found through my walk, my mission is serving others. And that's something that I'm very passionate about. I want to go into service when I'm older. I want to become a lawyer, and I want to help those around me that I can. So finding your mission is one of the biggest motivators to keeping you going within your walk. And that's how I would say, just find your mission, and then once you have your mission, just keep going. Even if it seems like it's tough or what you're doing is not going to work out, it'll always work out itself eventually, and you'll get to the point that you want to. It just takes hard work and dedication.
What are some specific moments or situations that inspired you to find that specific mission? A more specific moment was this Monday when I talked to the student's teacher, and it was just amazing seeing how much the student had improved just because of me willing to work with him. And it was just showing that like it's kind of like a reminder that like what you're doing matters, and it will pay off in the end. So having like, you know, even if that one person is just like, oh hey, like what's up, thank you so much for what you do, just like simply just recognizing you and like how valuable you are even when you feel like you're not, is one of the most important things that we can do. So pushing others within our society to continue and motivating them. Yeah, what are some ways that you think that we can kind of inspire others to do service in their communities?
One of the biggest ways is by being leaders yourself. So taking on roles that you typically wouldn't take on. You know, go volunteer at that soup kitchen, go clean up the trash around your school. There's a lot of different ways that we can get involved. It doesn't even have to be on a big scale, but those who are younger than us and even those in our community learn from our actions and mimic what we do. So having like that staple of, okay, I want to do this so I can better my community, and then hopefully people will want to help me out so we can grow together as a community, is the biggest impact.
Mm-hmm. And then kind of like on top of that, what are some ways that we can help those that are younger and that don't usually get those opportunities to help others? What are some ways that we can get them involved?
One of the biggest ways that we can get them involved is encouragement. So I know when we're younger, there's a lot of things that we don't realize are important. Like for me, I didn't really realize the importance of involvement until I got into high school. And I kind of wish that when I was younger, I would have had that person that would have been like, okay, follow your dreams, okay, go and join these clubs when you get into high school, do whatever you want. So having that support system for our younger students and just telling them that it's okay to be themselves and that they should get involved and try everything is one of the most important things.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I was actually hoping if I could bring Tori up again one more time. I just have a few more questions that I have to get off my chest, so. So when we kind of did our interview over the phone, you talked a little bit about what it took to instill this good work ethic and just really having your children stand up for what they believe the same way you do. So how do you think you did that as a parent?
Well, I think we should bring them up here and ask them how I did it. Lots of groundings and no, I'm just kidding. I just was very consistent and had them very involved. So they played sports. They've done the youth rally, since they were in 3rd and 4th grade. They did clubs at school. So I've always just had them very, very involved in a lot of activities, both community and otherwise. Very much a routine family. So Makai and Malik, they're probably going to hate me, but when they were young, they slept 7 to 7 for a very long time. So we kept a lot of routine, and they always knew what to expect, and so I think it helped.
And as a mother, I know that Asia, like getting to hear her story and everything, I know that she went through some hardships, and I'm sure your sons have too, being mixed. So how do you handle that as a mother? And how does that affect you as a mother?
So we all know that the environment is a lot different right now. And it has definitely tested me, because initially you get angry. And I've had to pull back a lot and teach them that that's not what defines them. Like what other people see as far as the color of their skin, that's not what defines them. They define themselves, and I've pushed education the whole time I raised them, and have taught them that everything you learn can never be taken from you. No matter what sort of hardships you're going through in your life or what sort of circumstances you're going through, nobody can ever take what you've learned. And so I've taught them that from a very young age, and just pushed the importance of education.
Yeah, those are some really wise words. And is there anything you wish you would have known before you became a mother? Like any advice that you would have been given?
Oh, no, but they're all teenagers right now. So somebody once told me that they make teenagers the way they do, so it's easier to let them move out. And there may or may not be a few days like that around our house. But no, I mean, it's definitely the hardest job in my life was being a parent, because you want to do it right. You want your kids to have a better life than you had, and but I'm proud of them. So.
And what do you think kind of molded you into the person you are today? Very hardworking and determined.
Life experiences and education, again, is so important to me. My path was non-traditional, so I didn't graduate from high school and go right into a 4-year college like society says everybody needs to do. I worked a little while first at, kind of odd places, and then I started working at State Farm, and because they offered tuition reimbursement, I started looking into going and getting my associate's degree. And then as I started going to college, I realized that unlike high school, I enjoyed learning. Like I enjoyed the topics that I chose to study in college, and I started to enjoy the process, and I started to meet really good people. And then once I remember that experience of meeting the new people also. And so once I had my kids, and push the importance of education on them, we continue to meet great people. And so that's also been a really good part of the education side of it for us.
And then to kind of leave it on a light note, I'm really curious, do you have any funny stories? I'm sure you do, about your children.
Oh my gosh, can we extend this another hour? Asia already knows this story I'm about to tell. The chips. So I sent her into the grocery store because they needed chips for sandwiches or something. And I said, just pick out one bag of chips. And I gave her the money to go into the store to get the chips. And she came back out with one bag of chips. And she says, Mom, the cashier stopped me and asked me if I wanted a second bag of chips because they were buy one, get one free. But I told her, no, I was only supposed to get one bag of chips. I was like, Asia, you have to go back inside and tell her you would like the free bag of chips. So that's a good one. Trying to think of some good ones with the boys. Makai's looking at me like he's going to run out of this place right now. I better not tell that one. Well, I can. It's fine. So when they were toddlers, they liked to remove all their clothes when they slept. So I took footy pajamas, cut the feet off of them, and zipped them up backwards when they went to sleep, so they could no longer remove all their clothes while they slept. Love you, Malik. Where are you? Love you. I told him I would get that in sometime before they graduated.
Well, this is obviously your time.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And then we have a few extra minutes, so we'll invite Bill Bryant back to the stage to talk a little bit more about his walk. So one thing that you had mentioned earlier was that some of your students say that you can't relate to their walk because you don't know what they went through. Can you tell us a little bit about how you kind of touch them and how your walk compares to theirs?
Well, a lot of times students will see you as somewhat of a finished product or an OG or whatever, and you might drive a nice whip and have some decent clothing and so on and so forth, and they assume that you always had a life of luxury or born with a silver spoon. And especially when they're dealing with issues like homelessness and any number of challenges. And sometimes when I'm talking to a middle schooler, and they'll say, Mr. Bryant, you don't have any clue what I'm going through. I said, well, when I was your age, I was sleeping in it's kind of difficult. I was sleeping in abandoned houses and living on the streets. And he said, man, that can't be true. You seem like you're doing okay, doing quite well, actually. And I say, well, you don't really know a person's story. You only know where they are now in their life. There may have been hardships that they had to endure that you know nothing about. And when people ask me, why are you so compassionate about what you do? I tell them I don't help people because I have so much. I help people because I know what it's like to have nothing. And so, you know, going through those things and then telling them that, you know, I was fortunate enough to be placed at Boys Town, which was the biggest break of my life. You know, and now, you know, I'm actually on the National Board of Trustees for Boys Town because I could not refuse when they asked me to give something back to a place that had done so much for me.
And after sharing these monumental parts, these difficult parts of your walk, how have you seen that your relationship with the people that you advocate for has changed?
Well, I think sometimes they feel we have somewhat of a kindred spirit because they see in me that even if you didn't start out with very much, that you can keep striving to better your condition. And again, going back to the education piece, my mother would constantly emphasize that it's very important for you to get an education. Even when I was thriving at Boys Town, I loved sports, and that was something I didn't get to do as a child. So I wanted to play everything, participate in any and everything. And a lot of times my motivation for my academic success was so I could be eligible to play a sport. I realized the value of education, but when I would call home or write home, I would say, I made this team or I made that team, and she would say, just send me your report card. And I said, but don't you understand, you know how important this achievement is. She said, long after that foolishness is over, you will need an education. And so that enabled me, even when I sustained a pretty serious injury my senior year, I still was so successful academically that I still had a scholarship to come to the university.
And what are some ways that you hope that your students do take that to heart, and how do you hope that they use that later in their life?
Well, you hear the term over and over, you know, have a plan B, or don't put all your eggs in one basket. And the list goes on and on. And I have a particular affinity for student athletes sometimes because I think that they can get it twisted. And I tell them that most of them are one play away or one injury away from being destitute. So I can really discuss some things on a level that resonates with me because I know exactly the path that they're traveling. And so I think that them realizing that I wasn't born an adult or an OG, that I actually was in grade school, I was actually in middle school, I was actually in high school. And I think that sometimes young people can't visualize that aspect of an adult because they have only known you as an adult. And when they realize that, hey, this person actually walked in my shoes, maybe I'd better heed a little bit of their advice.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right, you're welcome.
Our last walk today is Superintendent of Lincoln Public Schools, Dr. Steve Joel. So if you can come up here. So the first question is, during your life, you've had many walks and you've had a lot of years in education. So what are one or two meaningful moments that you've had on your journey?
Well, I think I've had a lot of meaningful moments. I grew up in New York, and went to a really big high school, kind of got lost in the shuffle. Neither one of my parents had high school diplomas. I recognized pretty quickly that if I was going to do anything with my life, that I was going to have to get an education, and I became one of the first in my family to do that. And that served me very, very well. School didn't come naturally for me, but I did well enough to find myself in college. But when I think about what my parents instilled in me, it was to take care of others, whether it was siblings or cousins or people in the neighborhood. When I was in high school, I've always found myself in a position of rooting for the underdogs and feeling badly for the students that, were being picked on by the more endowed individuals. And I never really reflected on that, because I'll tell you, I was on the wrong side of some of those positions when I got crossways with certain folks in high school. And I remember that high school was a very, very contentious time for me. Fortunately, I grew up and sports was a big part of me, like Bill was sharing. So I was able to advocate a little bit more. But when I think about the work that I do today, I really think it started back then, because my parents telling me, take care of others. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got when I began my administrative journey was to take care of people on the way up the ladder, because they're going to be the ones that are going to hold you up when you start slipping through the ladder. And I've tried to live my life that way, but I'll always point to the immigration raid of 2006 in Grand Island, where you can be in education an entire life, an entire career, and talk about all the things that we have to believe in. And listening to Bill, and we have to have conviction. We have to stand for something. And for me, it was always education, schools. It's an opportunity for people to better themselves. And you can be a mouthpiece as you get somebody like myself that starts out as a teacher and principal, superintendent. But in early December of 2006, Grand Island was one of 4 communities across the city that was, in a very, very coordinated way, at 6 o'clock in the morning, was raided by federal agents to the local manufacturing plant. And hundreds of people were arrested and detained and put in makeshift jails that were right outside the plant. And I remember thinking, as I got that phone call, I was stalled at one of those railroad crossings, where right outside the office, where not only on a bad day does one train come and slow you down, but then as soon as that one goes by, the next one comes in the other direction. And it ended up being almost like a divine intervention for me, because it gave me a chance to think, how will we stand up for kids who kissed their parents goodnight that night, and we now know we don't know where their parents were. 1,400 students we'd identified that could have had one or more than one parent detained. And I saw this incredible spirit of cooperation, even amongst people who were politically opposed to what immigration represented to them and their businesses, wrapped their arms around these families and these students. And that was a day that was the toughest day of my life, but also the most fulfilling day of my life, because before we all went to bed that night, we had a number of students whose parents we couldn't determine whether or not they were there or had been taken away. They were released to an adult, a caring adult. In some cases, it was a teacher who just said, hey, if you need somebody, we'll do that. And that reinforced in me over and over and over again just this spirit we all have to have in us about, when we're given opportunities to be successful, we're presented with opportunities to give that back. And that's what I've tried to do with my life. And so, if I'm watching a football game or a basketball game, I root for the underdogs. It's just my nature. And, again, I recognize that education was going to be my opportunity to be able to do some things. And I wasn't the sharpest kid in class, but I had a lot of great mentors in my life that nudged me and said you could do more, and it played out pretty well. I think another opportunity that I've had, and I don't consider this one a good opportunity, was when this building burned. And I recognized very, very quickly that while I'd only been here a year, there were people who had committed their entire lives and careers to LPSDO, and they lost so much. And how do you recover from those kinds of experiences? And everybody in this room, if you haven't, you will. Part of living is experiencing difficult challenges, personal, professional, and they test us to no end. And you know, I've never lost sight of the fact that that's part of our walk, is that we will have those experiences, and what can we do to inspire people and help people and coach people and counsel people to get through that. So when this building burned down, I very, very carefully tried to find the words that would inspire a sense of recovery, and they didn't need my words. The people that were here grieved it and then rebuilt it, and we're in this tremendous building right now in a school district that operates on all cylinders. So those are just a couple of.
Yeah, and you talked about how challenges make you into a better person and how they're just part of your walk. So can you explain on other hurdles that you faced in your education walk?
Well, as educators in the room know this, right? Not everybody agrees with what we're doing, and sometimes they can be pretty vocal about it. And you know, certainly you're not immune from that in Lincoln, Nebraska. But I will tell you that one of the things that I always tell myself at the end of the day is that constructive discussion, as long as people are willing to accept and understand others' ideas, is healthy. I've learned a lot from a lot of those conversations. But many of you that will remember, and I'm looking back at Oscar and Dr. Hicks because I know you were here, when we went through the Purple Penguin experience, another opportunity to stand up for what we believed in, but boy, did that split the community almost down the middle. And in fact, this room here was packed, standing room only. We had overflow rooms with people who had the strongest of opinions and beliefs on either side of that issue, and making points, you know, points and counterpoints. And a board of education that sits back here, who I report to, really trying and doing a tremendous job of supporting us, but knowing that probably in Lincoln, nobody expected this kind of a conversation, and nobody expected to have that kind of emotion be expressed on, I don't know, it lasted probably a month or a month and a half, where it didn't go away, and it became national, and it became international. And honestly, I'll tell you that in Czechoslovakia, because a friend of mine was in a cafe and he saw my face on the BBC, kind of the CNN of Europe, and the headline was "Face of Moral Decay in American Public Education." It had my picture with two penguins next to me. And I thought to myself, we've just gone through something that a lot of people won't experience in a long time, and that is that it brings out the best in people, and it brings out the worst in people, and it represents social change. And it's something that I always teach and preach, is that nobody really likes change, but we have to deal with change. And what an opportunity to stand up, and we coined the phrase at that point, all means all. And it doesn't matter where our students come from, it doesn't matter how they look, it doesn't matter how they express themselves. If they walk into our schools, they're going to be given the very, very best of what we have to offer. And why that was an obstacle, because while I was confident that we would get through this, I can tell you not everybody else was, because the emotions were so raw, the threats were genuine. I was walked out to my car for I don't know how many weeks by security because of threats that were coming in, that we were doing this awful, awful thing by accepting students that were expressing themselves differently. But it was a wonderful experience, because at the end of the day, we're still here, we're doing what we believe is right, and all means all. I think everybody in Lincoln, probably in the state, and I know certainly around the country, believe in that. There's a lot of people in this room that made that happen. So what I would say is when you stand up for the things that you believe in, you have to expect criticism. And people that are very, very convicted in their beliefs have and will leave little room for discussion and argument. And that makes it hard because you have to be able to take those shots.
And as you have just explained, you have been somebody who has taken a lot of criticism. And so what is some advice that you have for someone who has experienced intense criticism or is experiencing criticism?
I think it starts with confidence in your principles, what you believe in, and that while you don't make that, let that be overbearing upon others, that's your core. And so with me, I can have a discussion about anything, I can participate in anything, but at the end of the day, I stand by my values and I stand by what I believe in. And that's the advice I give to everybody that I come into contact with, is you have to know who you are, you have to be confident in what you mean when you say who you are, and you have to help others that are along that journey that are experiencing confusion with regard to, whatever the issue happens to be that they're dealing with. And you have to have conviction. And, I learned a long time ago that, as a leader of a school district or a school or, a team, that when things get the toughest, we have to realize that those challenges yield opportunities. And so I don't wake up in the morning saying, send me another tough one. What I do know is that with the folks that I get to work with every single day and the support of my family, whatever that challenge is, we'll meet. And I think that's what we have to, I hope everybody has that level of conviction. And it doesn't mean that I try not to be arrogant, I try not to be overconfident, but I want people to know that, there are just certain ways that I operate and live my life by, and, I'm not willing to negotiate those.
Thank you so much for sharing your walk. I think we're going to bring up the other speakers and ask you one final question.
Oh, okay.
I call this speed round. Yes. So, last question for each one of you. When do you think your walk is complete? Let's start with Dr. Joel.
Well, I don't think the walk is ever complete until life's complete. And I think that, those of us that have been doing what we're doing for a long, long time, we realize that even as I pass into ultimately what the next phase of my life is, there's still going to be opportunities to contribute and help and coach and guide, and that's what drives me. And we're never short of opportunities to do that.
I would have to agree with Dr. Joel. I would also further that by saying that your walk is carried on by those around you. So those that you work with, those who you help, those who you inspire will always carry and continue what you're doing. So your walk ultimately just goes on forever. It kind of just changes based on the improvements that need to happen and what needs to go on within society, but your walk is always continuous and those around you will always carry it.
I say the same. It's never going to be done. There's always changes to be made, and so the work continues.
I guess I'll fourth that. I think most of us are capable of being lifelong learners, and as long as we're learning, we're able to pass that wisdom on to others. And I think the greatest thing that can be said about anyone once their walk is complete, which ends with your last breath, is that the world was a better place because you were here.
Thank you. That's a little escort. The resilience and continued advocacy for others we have seen in these walks today illustrates individuals who have taken those nudges in life and stayed prepared for opportunities. Their service to others instills hope in those they advocate for. If
We don't want the walk to end as we leave this afternoon. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once stated, "There is no noise as powerful as the sound of marching feet of a determined people." You are those people, those who can help this community take steps toward kindness, civility, equality, and justice.
We would love for you to share your walk with us. You can find information on how to do this on our website by searching MLK Youth Rally on the Team app, or following us on Twitter at MRally93, or emailing us at mlkyouthRally93@yahoo.com. Also, plan to attend the 25th anniversary of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s Youth Rally and March on Monday, January 20th, 2020.
Mr. Bryant, Miss Westling, Miss Amari, and Dr. Joel, thank you again for sharing some of your steps today. Please join us in thanking them. They're all so amazing. Thank you again to Lincoln Public Schools for hosting us today. Have a great afternoon and walk together.